There we go. All right. So good evening, everyone. Welcome back. This is the Legacy Keepers, and today is January 8th. We have a beautiful special guest with us this evening, Sister Anika Khan, who is going to talk about genealogy, share some of the, I would say, educational sides for us to think about genealogy, but also on the personal side as to how she got into it in general, right? And so we'll see how that can help us with what we're doing here with our legacy work. So if any of you all have questions, feel free to ask questions when she when she gives us the floor, feel free to ask questions of her. She is graciously giving up her time, and I'm so thankful for you, Sister Anika, for being with us this evening. Just a little bit about who is in the room, so you know some of those who are here. We have people who are writing their legacy books, right? As we mentioned. And we also have a gentleman who is interviewing his grandmother. So he is going that route, right? He's interviewing his grandmother. That's Shedrick. He started doing his interviews and pulling together some of the information. Some people here are writing their own life stories, right? Like their full life story / autobiography. We also have some people focusing on specific aspects of their family history, like maybe things that happened in the past with some of the other family members and how that affects them and their life and such. So we have a plethora, if you will, of different approaches to the legacy book work. So I am going to jump over just so I can read a little bit of Sister Anika's bio. So Sister Anika, well, her previous life was in finances, right? So she's a money lady, economics. She has been a frequent guest on financial networks like CNBC, Bloomberg TV. She's been to the White House on several occasions and has discussed the U.S. economic outlook with senior administration officials in the Obama administration. Her economic research was also presented at the prestigious American Economic Association annual conference, and she was an adjunct professor at Queen's University in Charlotte, North Carolina. Her BS, bachelor's, is in economics from Florida A&M, which is the only other HBCU I said I would have gone to. If I didn't go to Howard, I would have went to FAMU.
That's shade, sister.
No, they didn't give me money. If I had money, I
Okay.
might have been down there. I had a full ride at Howard. You can't turn that money down. You know, Miss Money, you know,
Yeah,
economics.
that's right. That's right.
And her master's is from the University of North Carolina at Charlotte. But her genealogical research, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. So Anika specializes in genealogical research methods to trace kinship lineage and document family histories. She completed the Boston University certificate in genealogical research. So that is like a prestigious certificate, not a day-long endeavor. It's a real serious endeavor. And received her certificate in genealogical research. She focuses on African Americans and the formerly enslaved in the South. So without further ado, I would love to bring Sister Anika Khan and give her the floor, and let's learn about genealogy.
Alhamdulillah, Sister Zarina, and it's Dr. Zarina, correct?
Nope, I'm just Sister.
Oh, okay, Sister Zarina. I was going to put some respect on your name, but I still will because I didn't know about this project and I didn't know about your background. So it gave me the opportunity to look at it. And I'm so excited about the work that you and everybody on the call is doing. And inshallah, I'll be able to contribute just a little bit into what I'm doing on my end. I'm someone who has always, and I know you'll interview me, but I've always loved history. And I was looking for somewhere to put my history, passion, economics, and a love for writing and analytical skills. And this is everything that I could imagine. I don't do it to take on clients. I'm pro bono. I'm doing it just to learn. And so I've taken a whole host of advanced classes. So you're right. Many of the classes that that I'll tell you about probably later are deep in research, but there are a whole host of beginners and intermediate resources as well. So I'll start, and I hope that this will be more informal. And so if you have questions, please feel free to stop me and we can talk, because my understanding is we have an hour or 90 minutes, something long. So alhamdulillah. So to start, you know, the big idea here, as I was, you know, preparing, I wanted to, you know, give an idea of how do we reclaim our history, and as a result, strengthen our own identity. And so I thought that that was an apropos title. And I want to give you the idea of the improbability of existence, because, you know, we all know that Allah has a plan for us. And when we talk about the chance of being born, it's infinitesimal. And one of the authors I like, and his name is Adam Grant, he just recently made this comment about what would happen if in our lineage, a couple in our whole family tree, they didn't meet, they didn't survive, they didn't mate. He gives the probability a 1 in 400 quadrillion chance that we wouldn't exist. And so we have to consider that, you know, we are here for a purpose. And the very thing that we have a passion for is likely what we should be doing. I was looking at some stats, and I'm sure you all know it. When you consider the transatlantic journey for our ancestors, 40% of them didn't make it. And then another 2 million that survived that middle passage. After that, another 2 million didn't make it. So the chances of us even being here are infinitesimal. So for us, documenting that history becomes very important. Some of the mistakes that I see, and I kind of want to start out in this space, because I don't know how many of you have even started along the genealogy journey. But a lot of people, when they want to learn more about their families, they either don't begin because they're overwhelmed, and I don't think that's this group, because you're already writing books. Some don't have a research plan, and that's a big part of it. We'll talk about that. Some are very surface or high level and just jot down names and dates. In genealogy, our goal is to provide context, and I know that all of you know that. Some people that I talk to, when they find out that I'm passionate about genealogy, they'll talk to me only about DNA, and DNA is only a part of the story. I was guilty of very early on, when I started, of just using online sources and family trees. There are a whole host of other opportunities out there for us. People also neglect to question their evidence. So we have to, once we collect evidence, we have to question it. Sometimes we get traditions and family lore passed down to us, and we take it as that is the truth. And we have to check that family lore. My great-great-grandmother was this, or, you know, we have to check that. And we were also talking about not organizing, preserving our genealogy, especially in light of what's happening in California, the wildfires. We even talked about in 1890, the 1890 census was burned at the Department of Commerce in 1921. So we don't even have access to the majority of the 1890 census. And the other thing is actually citing, putting footnotes about the research that we're already doing, causing us to recreate the wheel when we sit down and do genealogy again. And it also prevents other people, family members, other genealogists from picking up and understanding where we left off. One of the things that is more technical is a bias, is what's called a Dunning-Kruger, where we just have our overconfidence. And in the genealogy space, we're overconfident about our own skills and don't take the time to learn. And finally, some of us just concentrate on possibly 3 or 4 generations. We think that that is the extent of our family history. But we have a rich family history. And those of you may recall, Alex Haley was able, even in those days, to create his own family history. And we have far more access today. People also tend to focus on their direct lines. And we have a number of other lines and family members to research. So what we're going to cover today is, number one, defining what genealogy actually is. And then I'm going to give you some tips, how I have learned how to do genealogy. And I think it's a good research strategy that you can use. First, determining what you want to know, writing it down, creating a research plan, starting the research, and then creating an identity profile and timeline. So we'll start. What is genealogy? And when we think about what genealogy is, genealogy is interchangeable with the words family history. It's the study of our ancestors and our kinship, who we are directly related to. And it is also the process of accurately finding information about our relatives. And the operative word is accurately, because we can take a DNA test, go online and find family trees and use that as a basis for our family history. So many of those trees are incorrect. So before we even jump into a tree, we have to be able to grab accurate information. So why is African American genealogy important? It can challenge historical narratives. Obviously, when you find your own story of your ancestors, even dating back to the pre-emancipation period, the enslaved period, we are adding to the larger narrative of American history. In fact, I found that one of my very brave, or a couple, my 4th great grandparents, who were very brave and courageous, they were attacked by the KKK. And I learned this in my research. They tried to steal, they stole their land, 163 acres of land. One night they came, attacked them, and they were brave enough to give testimony to the US Congress and give names. And so I only know about that history because it's in the records. And I had no idea I was attacked. I mean, there are citations and research around my very own family I didn't know exist. That helps you, when you find about your family, it helps you to strengthen your own identity. In fact, my 3rd great grandfather, who was the son of that couple, he went on to do great things, and in fact wrote the president at that time, Ulysses S. Grant, about the conditions of African Americans. That made me feel very proud of them, that they survived an attack. They had a son who cared about African American people. It helps us reconnect to our family lines. I have found so many people. I felt like I grew up in a small family and not connected to many. But once I started doing genealogy, there are so many lines of people. And there are people also that are passionate that I talk to very frequently. it also highlights diversity. So we all know that unfortunately many of us have, and for some fortunately where there was a marriage, a very diverse backgrounds based on our enslaved heritage. The last thing is that we have to educate future generations. And we that are living today are the bridge. I don't know how many of you have young people in your families that are interested in writing family history or getting deeper into the genealogy. But if they're not, it is on us to document that history. So here are some tips to begin your family history. We always, some people like to do it differently, but I've learned to start one person at a time. And it helps us to avoid being overwhelmed. It gives us a better handle on being more accurate and looking at the evidence. And it does make for better storytelling. It's also, once we get the full picture of someone, it helps us make connections easier, and it's an efficient research strategy. So when we begin to start, one of the things, obviously, someone in this group is doing an interview. That's kind of the one of the first things. But sometimes we know about our relatives. We know a little bit something about them. What we should do is write that down. And what we're looking for are names, nicknames, because you'll find in the censuses that sometimes when the enumerator comes to the door, the family, it may not even be a family member, or it could be someone else, and they only know the person by the nickname, or that's what they call them. And so when you're looking for, John Jones, he's Uncle Bub, that is how we relate to each other in our culture. Also, the phonetic variations are important when you're looking for someone in the census, because when an enumerator comes to the door, many of them they may have been literate, but they didn't have the same level of education. So if they hear, I love one of this example. I have a relative. His name was Melvin, and his last name was unique. It's Masovahe, and they called him Manville, Nozelvat, and it took me forever to find that guy. So you want to write down birth dates, birthplaces, the places that they lived, death and burials, also finding out their friends, associates, and neighbors and their affiliations. One of the places that I like to put them in is what is called a pedigree chart. And this is very similar to what you would find on Ancestry. But I'd be happy to give the link to Sister Zarina if this is something that, a format that works for you. Because once you start jotting this stuff down, this is a first take of putting the information in place. A second way to do this is to do what's called a family group sheet. And a family group sheet is the same idea as the pedigree chart, but it also helps you in a different way to jot down a little bit more information, and there are sources at the bottom. So typically when we start, we have to figure out what we want to know. So if you are interested, so for example, if I'm interested in my third great grandfather, his name is Henry Tutson, what do I want to know about him? What I want to know about him is, who are his parents, or is this the same Henry Tutson as another person? Was Henry Tutson, this is activity, was he in the military? So there are three types of research questions. The first is identity, where we are confirming that we have the right person, and we'll go into a little bit more detail about that. whether there's a relationship, who are the parents, who's the spouse, who are the children, whether or not they were involved in some type of activity. And an example is a research report I did for a friend. And what we wanted to know, what was the birth year of Sandy Falk? He was enslaved. And many of us know that pinpointing a birth date for a formerly enslaved individual is very difficult. And so we think he was either born in Georgia or Alabama. We know his wife. We know that he married her in 1865 in November. They probably were married while they were enslaved, but we don't have any formal documentation of that. Typically, the Freedmen's Bureau would come around and ask the formerly enslaved if they were married, and then there would be some document. And he was a resident in this particular place. He died in and he was likely, he lived in this county before 1840. He likely died in 1900. So the reason that the research question is so involved is because it is guiding our research. And it is a way for us to be able to pick up our research if someone else comes behind us. And it is also a way for us to pick up our research. Sometimes we put our research down for 1 month, 2 months, a year. And so this very involved research question will help us. So when we began to create our research plan, the first type of research that we talked about, research question, is identity. So let's say you have an identity question. You have looked up, let me go to, yes. You want to know about Sandy Falk. Here's your research question, and you go to one of the online databases and you put in Sandy Falk's name. We're going to go over this and how we tend to do it. I get back 4 Sandy Falks. How do I know which one is my relative? There is the Sandy Falk who was born in 1856. There are actually 2 of them. There's one that was born in 1825, and there's one that was born in 1854. Well, I know through either interviews or just family lore that his wife was named Eliza. And so I'm able to look at the household members. I see there's Eliza. I know that he was born in Barber County. I don't necessarily know his birth year because that's what I'm trying to find, but I do know that he was either born in Georgia or Alabama. And so this is the right Sandy Falk. I wouldn't only use this as the only form of evidence, but it is one form of evidence. And so I would start, if I have an identity question, with the census. I also look at vital records, meaning I would look for birth records. I would look for death records. I would look for marriage records. I would also look at, many of us were in the church. Our ancestors were in the church. You can call churches and get information. Some of that information is even in the announcements. Sometimes the churches will even have obituaries, but obituaries are another thing, another source that provides a lot of information. We'll talk about newspaper articles. They also provide a lot of genealogical information. Some of our relatives have immigrated to the US and became naturalized. Those also provide a lot of information. Probate and wills. I've done a lot of work where I am going through wills and probate records, trying to find key information, and military records as well have a whole host of information. How do I do it? How do I find this information? Well, one of the free sites that I go to is Family Search. Family search, typically we go directly to search the historical records, and we'll put in the name, Sandy Falk, and then the place we'll put in, oh, he's from Alabama. He's probably born in 1825. We'll put that in. And it's likely it will come up, but it is also likely that it may not come up. And so one of the ways that is good is to use this little area, find a collection, and put in what it is that you're looking for. Go back to this. I'm looking for a census record. I'm looking for a birth record. I'm looking for a will. I'm looking for any immigration records. And this is what the census looks like for him. These were his family members. And we began to create a unique profile for Sandy Falk. We know that all of this information on the top can be attributed to him. But when we start to look for him, we also know his children's names. We know his wife's name. We know when she was born. We know that he was a farmer. So all of those are useful clues for us to be able to continue to look. On the very bottom, when I talked about citations, here's a typical citation that I would use to be able to note, this is what I found. This is where I found Sandy Falk in the census. So what if your search doesn't yield any results? We talked about phonetic variations. You would literally say the name to see how it might sound to someone unfamiliar. Esther, S, it might start with the letter S. You'd be surprised what you might find. You can also search using phrases and wildcards, just like you would do in the internet search in these databases. You can use the exact quotation mark, Sandy Falk. You'll get only those particular results that say Sandy Falk. But if I don't actually know, if his first name Sandy ends with a Y or an IE, I just put a question mark in the end, and it will bring me back everything that is either IE, Y, EE. It'll give me everything. Asterisks also are very helpful, because asterisks will give me everything that follows. We can also create an identity profile. I'll show you a quick identity profile. I alluded to that, where we are generating unique traits. And you can literally take the name off of the search and only put in those traits. I'm looking for someone who lived in Barber County in this time period. I'm looking for someone who died in Barber County in this time period. Whose siblings are these? Whose occupation is this? Who lived here? That's an easier way. That's another way to be able to find the person you're looking for. I also like to create a timeline, noting what, in a chronological order where they were. And just simply focusing on online databases will only get you so far. You literally have to get up and visit repositories. I took a trip to the National Archives in DC, and I actually took a class there, but it was phenomenal. I was able to learn so much more about my relatives. The state archives are online. We should visit those. The libraries have a whole host of information, genealogical societies, and the county clerk. Here's an example of an identity profile that I usually start with. It's almost like character development when you're writing a story, when you're writing something. You want to put the person's name, the birth date, the birthplace. You want to put important information, the person's mother, their spouse. All of those key bits and pieces will be able to help you find them and help to guide your research. The other is a timeline. This is a high level timeline of a particular locality, but I also typically will put in where this person was during this event. When in 1897, when this happened, where was my relative? In 1910, where was my relative? And so that is something that you can consider, because that is helping you to provide historical context. How did they fare in the Great Depression? What happened? What allowed them to get from one place to the another? When the Florida East Coast Railway was completed, all of a sudden, we're opening up more opportunities for them. And those are questions that help us inform us. Well, a second type of research question is relationship. And this one is very typical. And you're asking, who were the parents of? Who was the husband of? And here, I typically start with vital records. Marriage records, if they hold information, can be very helpful. They can give you a whole host of information. They will tell you who married them. They tell you potentially the parents, the witnesses. Witnesses also will give you kind of their inner circle. The birth records give you a whole host of information. Again, the census records, probate, church, pension records are sometimes you get the wife's pension records, and sometimes you get the pension record of the person who served in the military. They give an enormous amount of information. Tombstones and burial records, sometimes you can literally go to the burial to where they're buried and look at the tombstone, and they may be right next to the wife that you were looking for and other family members with a similar name. Here are some books that I typically go to when I'm working. So once I start my research plan and I start looking, I have others, but I'm typically looking at, number one, genealogical standards. This is kind of standard for all genealogists. It is our roadmap. This is how you should be thinking about the standards. The Red Book will also give you a really bird's eye view to the location that you're looking at. A lot of our work starts with the location. And so I do a lot of Florida research. And so when I'm looking at Florida research, it will specifically tell you, here is where, here are the state censuses that are available. Here are where tax records are. And so I look at the Red Book, I look at the source book, I look at the researcher's guide, I go to the National Genealogical Society guide. Now, obviously, the National Genealogical Society guide you have to pay for, but I do. When I first started working, I grabbed the Black Roots. Tony Burrows is phenomenal. I look at Finding a Place Called Home, African American Ancestors. Evidence Explained is kind of in the toolkit of every genealogist because it helps you with citations, citing documents. And I just learned about the International Vital Records Handbook. For activity-based research, you're probably asking questions like, what's my relative in the military? Where did they go to school? What type of job? We can use newspapers and local history to do that too. We can also look at court and legal records and obituaries to put a little bit more context about what they were doing. So this is where I start. I talked about the books, but when I start my plan, I go to Family Search and I literally type in Family Search Florida online. And Family Search has a guide of all of the online sources, whether it's on their site or Ancestry or wherever. And so if I said, start with vital records, you would go here and you would start with vital records. And you would say, okay, from 1880 to 1935, there's an index only of Florida births and christenings. And I would put that in, click the link, go in and type my person. If it doesn't immediately come up, I would go back and do different types of searches. I would do the phrase and wildcard searches just to see if their name was different. I would think about it phonetically. I would also look at these marriage links. I look at every single one of them in the time period that my ancestor lived. It's much longer, but my little note here is the link, but you can quickly just change the link. If the state has 2 words, just use an underscore. But you can just say, oh, this person is in, South Carolina or North Carolina, or this person is in Illinois. This is where I start to get all of the information. The other on family search, instead of going directly to the box, you can go to the catalog. And that is one of the best ways to do it. And why is that? If you go to the box, you're only pulling up what family search is indexed. They haven't indexed everything. And so in the catalog, you'll find more information. So this is what comes up if you put in catalog. And I'm looking for online sources. You can also do any. And let's say I'm sitting here in New York. I'm looking for New York. This is what will come up. I'm looking for vital records. Here's what's indexed. But then right above it, there are 34 links that have not been indexed. And so I would look there as well. As you can see, above it, there are a whole host of other links that you can take a look at. When I'm also thinking about my ancestor, I put them in some type of time period. And so if I'm thinking about an ancestor that was formerly enslaved, I'm thinking about all of these components. I'm thinking about where these particular events happened. And I'm thinking about how this could have impacted my ancestor. I'm looking at Reconstruction. Reconstruction is where I spend a lot of my time. I look at Reconstruction. That period is that period of 1865 to 1877, and it ends with the Compromise of 1877, because this was the most contested, one of the most contested elections, where the former president Rutherford B. Hayes decided to remove the troops from the South. And so, interestingly, one of my ancestors, right around that time, the exact time that the troops were removed from his area in Florida, he moved his family. I don't know if exactly that was the motivation, but it probably was. When you look at the so-called Jim Crow era, the Red Summer took place in 1919. So many of our ancestors were brutally attacked in many areas of the country in 1919. We also have to contemplate in the period of 1916 to 1930. That was the first wave of migration. And so, you might be looking for your ancestor in one area, and then your trail goes cold, but then you realize, oh, wait a minute, he could have been a part of the Great Migration. Probably went to Chicago or New York or Miami, some big urban area. And you can look in those periods. The Civil Rights era, obviously, and then the modern era. We're making history right now. And as we think about some of the things that we have experienced, I need to put COVID on that list. They are telling a story about our history, and generations, inshallah, down the line, they will be asking how we handled a lot of this. The African-American newspapers are a chock full of information. There were some national African-American newspapers. They may have a city title on them, but they had news from all over the country. So for example, I was looking at the New York Age. I thought it was just for New York, but I saw that every every month, I learned that I had Bahamian relatives. There was a Bahamas section that they would write about, a section about Key West, a section about the Bahamas, etc. So these are some of the newspapers that had a national appeal. The Chicago Defender back in 1910 was started by Roger Abbott, and he was largely responsible for the first wave of the Great Migration through the paper, enticing people to move to areas like Chicago. I turned to this bibliographic checklist. It's a book that I have right behind me. And anytime I'm working in a new area, I grab it just to kind of see what newspapers, what time period. The Chronicling America is right below this picture, and they have African-American newspapers by state. Chronicling America in general, even if I'm not focused on African-American newspapers, I would put my relative's name in that box just to see if it comes out. And if not, I would use the different search mechanisms. I saw this documentary, The Black Press Soldiers Without Swords. That was excellent. There are a ton of webinars on Family Tree webinars. If I don't know how to do something, I go to familytreewebinars.com. Some of them are free, but I go ahead and pay for it annually because it is a lot of helpful information. And feel free to use this list to begin to look at to see if your relative shows up in these papers. I also write to the archives. This is me writing to, I didn't know anything about doing genealogy in the Bahamas. So I wrote them and I said, hey, you know, I'm new to this. Do you have any information? Here's my relative. Tell me how to find them. They got right back to me. And so anytime you're starting new research, feel free to reach out to the experts. This is what they do. They're archivists, and they will get right back to you. When I'm done with all of my research, I typically put it into some type of report or family narrative. In this particular case, this is, as you can see, this is the research question that we've been talking about. And then here is my research strategy to try to figure out when he was born. I was able to narrow it down between 1815 and 1825, but I want to see if what holds more weight. So I started out with the 1870 census, which is the first census where the formerly enslaved and African Americans in general, their full names were written. I also wanted to cast a larger web, going back to 1820 and looking at people with the last name Falk that were enslavers in the Southeast. I found a network of them. I wanted to look at military records, see if he had been in the military. I wanted to look at death and burial records and agricultural because he was a farmer, census and the Freedmen's Bureau, etc. And so this is what I wrote up. When you do your research, as I mentioned, don't only look at one source. Make sure that you have at least two sources from independent, that are independent of each other. What I mean by that is that not the same person gave information. You also want to consult a whole host of sources. You want to say, oh, I looked at the census, I looked at vital records, I looked at military records. And you want to make sure that it wasn't secondhand information. And if at all possible, that you're looking at an original record. As I close, I want you to imagine as you try to search for your own relatives, imagine how a relative in 100 years from now is going to try to locate you. They're going to try to locate you with information about you in present day records. What documents or sources will they find you in? And how and where in your whereabouts? What information will they find about you? And that is exactly how you should think about finding your own relative. And with that, that's it. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you so much. That was very in-depth, and it really gave me a lot to think about that I had not thought about at all. You know, I've been so focused on family histories and making sure we capture the elders while they're alive and all of these things. And I haven't really even considered, to be honest, some of my other ancestors and such. It's not that I didn't care, but I guess I just felt that maybe it was too much work. I don't know if I felt it was too much work or I don't know what, but I want to ask you some questions about how you got into this and why you came into it. But I think before I do that, I want to just open up the floor for anyone that may have a question for Sister Anika based off of what you all heard here today. I don't know if this was all new information for you or if it maybe gave you some things to think about. But let's see, do you all have any questions surrounding the wonderful presentation that we had? Yes, Dr. Anissa, I see your hand.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam, sister.
Thank you so much.
Alhamdulillah.
It's so wow, this is such important work. As I was doing some writing last night, I thought about my paternal grandmother, and I think I know when she came to the United States from Barbados.
Mhm.
Yeah, and then I said she was only 12. I was like, I wonder why she came. I never knew.
Mm.
And of course she's passed away now. And I have no one on that side of the family directly to ask. And I asked that question. I wonder why she came. I wonder who she came with.
Mhm.
Because if she was 12 years old, she had to have come with someone. At
Mhm.
least I would think so. I said,
Mhm.
I wonder if she came with her siblings, her older siblings. So that was one of the things that I thought. And then of course over the years I thought, I wonder how do I get to know my dad's family? Do I have any more family in the US that came or that are descended from the family in Barbados or not? And then the interesting thing of my mom and my dad meeting in New York, my mom from the South in North Carolina and my dad meeting. So, I mean, like, and my mom's side of the family have done some work. One of my relatives, I think her name is Tanya Kuntz. She's been doing some genealogical, she does a lot of work. I don't know all of it. But I think, oh, wow, this is so interesting. It does take a lot of work, Serena.
Mhm.
So I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah,
I'm glad I
no.
have a relative who's doing some of it, but I sure would like to. I do want to know more. I'm afraid to go down the rabbit hole
I
because,
know.
gosh, this is a lot of, it's going to be a lot. If I
It's
start
a
going down
lot.
there, I don't know what's going to happen.
I want to
But
say
thank you.
this is that alhamdulillah is that this is a life's work.
Hmm.
I've been in so many classes with genealogists who have 30 years experience. My background, my academic and professional backgrounds were in economics. So this is kind of a second act for me. And so I started genealogy during COVID. And so I took my first class at Boston University, and I was like, oh, wow, I'm a research person, but this is a whole other thing. But in all of the classes that I've taken, a lot of people just focus on their own family, and they have been researching their whole family for that 30 years. And so it's not something that you would do overnight. It's something just like writing a book. You know, I don't know the process that you teach her how. You just do it one, you know, you create the plan, you do it one step at a time. And sometimes sometimes sisters, that it's heavy for me, right? Like sometimes you get in the enslaved world and stuff, you know, like it can be a burden. And so I can't do this all day and all night. And I might, you know, a friend might say, oh, why don't you do it for me? And then I find something really deep and dark, right? Like it's heavy work, right? But then you find something so exciting that you cannot wait to share. And so it's not something that you would do and you would find the answer immediately. Sometimes you can, but most of the time I know that inshallah, Allah will bless me to be able to document as much as of this history as possible. Inshallah, it makes it easier for generations to come after me. Many of our Jewish and Asian associates, they have their histories. In fact, the Jewish families, you go to the graveyards, they have their entire history on the back of the tombstones. And you have all of that. But for us, we're like, oh, we're, you know, formerly enslaved. We don't have it. But the world is getting smaller. And so we don't know what we're going to find out. In fact, when I talk to my African friends, they know their history. All it is one DNA test away. So we don't know. So I don't want you to be overwhelmed. I think that if taking things one step at a time, just a name. I want to know more about my grandmother from Barbados. There is a ship manifest, right, that shows when she came. All you have to do, you could start off at family search, just like I showed you. Where did she live when she landed here? And then put her name in. Also in Ancestry, they have a whole list of ship manifests. And then you can find her. She had to come over on a ship, you know, somehow. And so you will see the people she came over with. You will see who she came to visit and was living with, and who she left in the old country. You will, inshallah, you will find, unless she was a stowaway. And so, you know, that very small amount. Sometimes I even see ship manifest with, they find the stowaway and they put stowaway on the bottom. So inshallah, you will be able to find that. So that's your research question. That's how you start.
Thank you.
Alhamdulillah.
Thank you for the work that you're doing. This is big work, and thank you for reminding us of how deep and even possibly dark it could be. So yeah, thank you. Thanks for sharing with us.
Does anyone else have any questions for Sister Anika? Or reflections? Questions or reflections?
Did I completely bore you?
Not me.
I have a question.
No.
About 10 years ago, I did go on Ancestry.com and tried to find my great grandmother rather. I found where they were from, what plantation they were on, but she leaves Virginia and goes to New York. And then from New York, I find one house that she's in, actually somebody's maid in this house. And then she shows back up in New Jersey with my grandfather. With my grandfather, her baby son. And she tells everybody that her late husband is somebody who we can never find. We don't know what happened to her in New York. My parents were never allowed to talk about what happened, but we can't find anything about her from the time she left New York. My grandfather is an only child, So it kind of is a mystery of what happened to her when she left Virginia. Even our last name, we found out that that was not our name. That came back with that name. She left as a Hancock and came back as a Hicks that was supposed to be married to this man named Robert Hicks. And we can't find a Robert Hicks anywhere, but we found Hancock. Um, yeah, and it kind of went cold from there. So I didn't have $5,000 to pay Ancestry.com because that's what they wanted to to kind of help out
To
and
find
get in
to
there.
hire a genealogist. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
this is work you can do yourself. And so if I'm understanding, you started down the path of getting documentation. You started potentially grabbing a census. You probably pull some city directories, maybe. Just tell me what your process was. How were you able to find this information?
Most of it really did come from after talking to my parents and then Ancestry.com and then through the census. Yeah, and having the information I did have. Because the census gives you a lot of information.
It does. It does. It's
Yeah.
just one source, and it's not the only source. So our and sometimes people they're not always truthful or give complete information. And so our job is to be able to use other sources to back that up. And so when you talk about you think she changed her name. So one of the things that we talked about in the presentation is not even using a name to search, but using unique identifiers to try to figure out a person that was born in this time, died in this time, lived in New Jersey, all of those things, and see who comes up. And you would be surprised. I would zero in on that. I would get like some names of people, Black women of those names, no matter where they live. And then I would look to see who she's with, who she's traveling with, who are her associates, who is she married to, this person that could potentially change her name. And it's very possible you'll be able to find your relative that way. Another way is doing it through DNA. My second great grandfather, I don't think he knew his parents because it's such different information in almost every record. And so I was able to find that elusive grandfather, that elusive father for him by doing this very process. Looking at the DNA and removing the name and looking at the identifiers. And so I would also look at city directories. That is, they're done on an annual basis. And they also give a sense of where the person could have gone. Like you can literally go to a city directory and say, okay, I'm looking for this person and see if they're there. Sometimes they'll avoid the census, and that's why they don't show up.
Okay. Thank you.
Alhamdulillah, this work is not as hard as you think. It just really is trying to figure out what you want to know for starters. You, Sister Khadija, you want to start out by asking, where did I think you said was your great-grandmother? Where did my great-grandmother go after she left Virginia? You said Virginia and New Jersey.
She left Virginia, Appomattox County, Virginia, where we found her and some siblings in the home of some one named Hancock, and it was like on the same street. It was different people with the last name of Hancock. And then it says she went to New York, and she went to New York. We don't know why, but it shows her as a housemaid in someone's house. And then it shows her in Atlantic City, New Jersey. Now she went from being named Hancock to Hicks, Hicks, with my grandfather with no husband, but the name of her husband allegedly was Robert Hicks. We could not find a Robert Hicks. She would not talk about. And I know back then, maybe she got pregnant and didn't get married, or maybe, we don't know where the name, made up name of Hicks came from. We don't know. So it kind of goes cold from there because she refused to talk about uh, Robert Hicks, and we tried to find him in all parts of New York, and the only ones that came up with that name during that same time, even Czech military, was a white, and my grandfather is not biracial, so we couldn't figure that one out.
What year are we talking about? What's the time span?
Oh my God, my great grandmother was born in the 1800, 18 something, and then my grandfather was like 1911.
Which when he was born?
Yeah.
Do you know when he
I
died?
have to read. I have to look up. Yeah, I do have it in my notes off the top
Okay.
of my head. I can't say.
Okay.
But
So yeah, I mean, if we're talking about New York and New Jersey, that should be fine, because I think it's 100 years where you can get more information, but it's New York is notorious for not providing information. You can't get death certificates, you can't get birth certificates, so the vital records are very difficult to get here. But if he was born in 1911, and you tell me when he died, then it's a little bit, then it's possible. I'll also give Sister Zarina an email, a link to free genealogists with Family Search. They do consultation, but you have to come to the table with information. You have to show, in advance. They want to know, show me the census. Like, you have to do some starter work, and it's they'll meet with you for 30 minutes, and you can do it weekly for 30 minutes. And they are going to just simply guide you on your research. So once you gather all your documents together, they can help you piece things together.
Okay. I found that he was born July 5th, 1916.
Okay.
In New York City.
When did he die? You know?
He died February 29th, 2012.
What was his name?
Harry Edward Hicks.
Okay.
His mother was Maddie May Hicks. And her Maddie May Hicks, and she was born Hancock.
Okay.
For a second, I felt like I was on that TV show, like where was it Henry Louis Gates, where he's doing that. This stuff is fascinating, but it also, it's like the detective. Like, you really have to start digging and doing lots of different things and thinking outside of the box as well. There's some creativity and art that goes into this, as to thinking about different ways that you can find people. So, Sister Khadija, I'm gonna get the link that Sister Anika gave us, and then I'll share those with the class as well, so you can have some place to start.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I just have to say this thing. I just put in Family Search. I found my grandmother and my grandfather, and her husband's name came up. And I've never seen his name in print.
Wow.
Like I just know that was, but I've never seen his name in, like, that's wild.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you.
Please, go through the steps. I'll send Sister Zarina the PowerPoint so that you can, follow exactly what I'm talking about. Because it may seem like a lot of information that, that I'm sharing, but if you go step by step, start with what you want to know, write down what you already know, and then search what you know. That's what you have to do. Use the steps. And you may not find the name exactly, because our relatives, especially if they were in the 19th century, there is a high potential that they changed their names. Many of us changed our names. And so there is a high potential that they're going to be named something else. And so you have to figure it out by looking at identifiers. Think about yourself. Take your name away. How would someone find you in a search? They would be looking for your occupation if it's consistent. They would be looking for where you're from. If you're from Detroit and you've always lived in Detroit, I know that's where I'm looking. If you, married a certain person, if your father's name is this, I'm looking for a census in that time period for the father. In genealogy, we call it indirect information, right? And so if I can't find it directly, I typed it in, I found the name. Then I'm looking for it indirectly. And a lot of times I'll look at the siblings. I'll get a list of the siblings and I'll see if when they got married, they named the parents. I'll look for birth certificates for the siblings. I'll look for anything I can find that might name that particular person. So you're right, it is an investigation. You are trying to think outside of the box when it's not easy. And sometimes our relatives are very specific about what their name is. They might always go by Junior. They may always go by a middle initial or something like that. And so that is what we're trying to find, what's consistent.
Beautiful. All right. So Brother Shedrick said the information was new to him and it provides other avenues for exploration. He's the one that's interviewing his grandmother. So he can't speak out loud, but he typed it into the chat. So that's cool. Okay. I think Brother Nazim, did you have a question?
I do. I'm like you said before, writing about my son or the role he had in having me looked at death differently. But like I said before, when he passed, we were in Albuquerque and whatever, and a lot of the data that I might be able to present to somebody, I just don't have it at my immediate disposal because I've moved a couple of times. I had everything lined up as far as his information that she's talking about, but I don't have any of that, and I'm just wondering because he was 8 years old. Does he have a history? Is he in the loop? Can he be found? Those are my kind of questions.
When was he born?
1980 something.
So some of the newer documents are not going to be from 1980, but I have found myself and my siblings. You'd be surprised. Go to Family Search and see if he's there.
Okay.
If you have an Ancestry account, you can set up an Ancestry account just to do some simple searches. Check there as well.
One last question then. Like you said, he has siblings around, so like you were mentioning, wasn't clear how that might work, but if I looked up one of them, could I use that as a tracer or is that just something you just mentioned?
It's not something I just mentioned. It's more when a relative is elusive. We can't find a relative. So you're talking more about a recent relative and someone who was very young. So no, there's not going to be a lot of documents. What you're looking for, and you probably already have it, is a birth certificate. You're looking for any announcements, for example, in the Muslim Journal that might have been about him. You're looking for school records. This is how you put together a genealogy on a young person that recently passed. You call the school, find out, because you'd be surprised, how he was 8.
Right.
Right. And so he would have been in what grade? Like 2nd grade?
Yeah, maybe 2nd.
Something like that.
Yeah, still call the school and see. And that really goes to, as African Americans, we need to do better record keeping. At our masajid, when we have these events, someone goes to Hajj, someone is born, someone has a nikah, or somebody does anything, we need to be able to have records. So when someone calls and says, hey, my relative is Muslim and I'm doing their genealogy, can you please provide information? And so I get announcements from my masjid all the time. And, that's something that you want to have a file for your son of everywhere he was mentioned.
Right.
And so you would know his touch points, you know, if he was active in something, right, where they would have recorded his name. And so you would know that. But I would definitely call the school and see, you know, because in first grade and even in second grade, there's a report card. Maybe you have that.
Right. Okay.
So
Okay.
that's genealogy as well. And, you know, if you have pictures, and because, you know, think about with someone who doesn't know him, who didn't know him, what would they want to know about him? They want to know what he looked like. They want to know what his personality was. How can we prove what his personality was? What was he active in? What did he like to do? Create a profile for him. And all of those things, you know, it could be someone 100 years from now, and they may find, even though he died young, may Allah forgive him of his sins, grant him to the highest level of Jannah, that they had something in very similar to him, you know. And so you want to document all of that and have evidence, because genealogy is about the evidence. How can we prove what you're saying is true? Is it written somewhere? Is there a document that says, like when my son was very young, he was in Taekwondo. So I would call, you know, the school and say, hey, and he started when he started first went when he was 3 and then back when he was 7. So he's still very young. And I would call them and say, what do you have on my son? I could still call the school. What do you have on him? Was there a teacher that remembered him? You know, like, and you could interview anybody that had any conversation or knew him, and you just tape it. A lot of times what I would do is when I go to see a relative, I would just take my phone, put my recorder on. I say, do you mind if I ask you some questions? I'm going to record this. Do you mind? And they say, I don't mind. And then I would just let my phone run and let them talk. Do you know, like my father passed away last year. I did that for him. My uncle passed away right before that. I mean, I've had a lot of deaths, and I literally have interviews with them where I just go and ask. And, you know, you want to also ask friends. Did your son have a friend? Right? Like maybe at the masjid, your son had a friend. Interview the friend.
Okay, last question. It just popped in my head while you were talking. Would the funeral home who buried him, or the cemetery where he's buried at, would they have to still be in business for me to try to check it that way?
So if they're not in business, it's going to be difficult. However, the state archives, they are responsible for keeping up with things like death certificates. You should have an obituary. And it's very possible you know, you have it in your own records or you put it online. But you are the only one, your family would know where that obituary is. If maybe the masjid did it, or maybe a family member, you have to track that down. Obituaries are notoriously hard to find, but once you find it, it's chock full of information. And then in terms of, you know, more information, obviously, you know, contacting where he was buried, they sometimes have records dating back to that time period. So, you know, typically, I know when my father passed, they asked for a lot of information, and you have to submit that to, you know, the people that are burying him, you know, so you would go back to that. Someone has that information if you don't. Maybe not the obit, but somebody. So that's the obit is gonna be on you.
Right. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Alhamdulillah.
Thank you. Sister Zenoria, did you have a question?
Yeah, because I'm doing the masjid's history, I was just wondering if there are certain things I've been able to ascertain some things from different different universities here, papers that people have written about Islam in Richmond, and one on the history of Black Richmond, which had that information in it. But I was wondering if there are other sources that would be available with that kind of information.
Sister, alhamdulillah for that work. I mean, when I heard that you were doing it, I was very excited because it's something that I would not even think about. So alhamdulillah, and thank you for the work that you're doing.
Thank you.
My question for you is, what is it about the masjid, the history of the masjids that you're trying to, the masajid that you're trying to find out?
Well, there's very little, except for someone did their dissertation, and they came to the masjid and they interviewed some people. So I have a good bit of information, but I know myself that some of the information, like you say, is not accurate. And so I was just wondering if there might be other ways of trying to find that kind of information.
My first inclination is to ask you, sister, because it sounds like your research is focused on expounding on this dissertation. Is that correct?
I will do that, but I also have some people interviewing their family members who were pioneers. And I'm thinking this is going to be an anthology. And these people were, unlike most of our masjids, this particular masjid is a derivative of a church, where the minister went into the church and told his congregation that he had decided that he was coming into the Nation of Islam, and that he was resigning that day as their minister. And so these people, all except, my understanding is, all except a handful of them came with him into the Nation of Islam. And so this is a masjid that still exists. It's Masjid Bilal in Richmond, Virginia. But it is a masjid that came from that kind of background. They were also part of, when he was the minister, he was the minister of a church called the Ancient Ethiopian Spiritual Church. And so what I've noticed is, because I saw a picture from a radio station where they used to go and sing on Sundays. But I saw a picture and they actually wore the same kind of garb, the women did anyway, the same kind of garb that women wore in the Nation of Islam. But they were already dressed that way. So in my mind, that made it a lot easier for them to make that kind of transition. But they were very dedicated people, and they went on to purchase. They've actually been in 4 locations in Richmond. And one of them was the little church I told you about. And I'm thinking we need to, because they're really tearing down Richmond's communities, that we need to put some kind of what do you call it? I'm sorry.
Historical marker.
you know, we can, in Richmond, we can put placards.
Yeah.
Or metal, you know,
A
records.
historical marker?
That's what I'm trying to think of. Historical marker, yes. So I'm thinking as a part of, and especially when we get ready to launch the book, I want to have that ready as a part of that launch. But I just I this place, it made it possible for, there are like 20 masjids in Richmond, Virginia now.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody acts like they know where this little one came from. Or that's how they look at it, you know.
The little one, the first one?
The first one, yes.
Mhm.
So people have sort of usurped the history of this masjid. Like a lot of the programs we had, and that's a wonderful thing. They have duplicated those programs, but now they act like they are the originators of those things.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just think it's important for us as African Americans to put that in place. You know, tell our own story and put everything in place, because this was actually the first masjid in Virginia.
Alhamdulillah.
And
Well,
so we need to put those things in place. And people have been saying it for years and years, but I, you know, my husband passed recently. May Allah be pleased with them, have mercy on his soul.
I mean,
You know, that gave me time to really put into this, because now I'm not a caretaker. And so this gave me time to put in this, but I know that I'm getting old, and it has to be done, and none of our youngsters are interested.
mm-hmm.
So it has to be done, so that perhaps once that's done, they'll do more research and begin to write about their parents and their grandparents who started this masjid. You know, and that's important to me. I just think that we so often walk away from, you know, our own history, and not, you know, just let other people do it. And other
Mm-hmm.
people can't tell your story.
That's exactly right. So it sounds like to me your focus is on understanding the formation of the first masjid of Richmond, Virginia, correct?
Right.
Mm-hmm. And delving a little bit more into the people
Mm-hmm.
that helped form it, and then considering the events around that during the time period of that formation, including the resignation of the imam.
Right.
And so I'm sure that's all, you know, that research question and the outline, and you've interviewed all of the living people that are associated. But if anyone has passed away, you know, then the genealogy can help inform you a little bit more about who that person was, and then you can kind of get an idea of what could have been the motivation for them to be in the nation. And then
Okay.
the transition, you know,
Okay.
you can, you know, and one of the things I mean, there's so many Muslim journals. If they're in the Muslim journal, you can find out, you know, what they were doing, what their motivation was. There could be local papers that may have, you know, announcements about what the masjid was doing, what that person was involved in. So, I mean, I would, you know, obviously if the person is living, I would interview them, but then I would before I even interview people, I come to the table with information.
Okay.
Because a lot of times people are like, oh, I don't remember. But if I start out with, do you remember when the imam resigned and these things happened? They'll be like, oh no, it didn't happen like that. And so then you would write that down, and you would come to the table with, I saw this article. Why are you not in it? Like that type of stuff, that's the type of, you want to come to the table with information. And I know a sister who's doing similar work in North Carolina.
Okay.
And, I'll reach out to Zarina and Sister Zarina and let her know the sister's name.
Okay. That'll be wonderful.
Awesome. Yeah, it would be really cool to have like a full list of the members who came over, even if you're not able to interview any of those people, but if you can find some type of list of the people who were members of the church and came over to honor them in print, that would be really cool.
There's a pretty good list of all of those people in the dissertation that the brother used. And he said to me, he gave it to me. And he said that he told me to call him and when I needed any information. But, I was really concerned that because he got information from different people, that he ended up getting different stories about the same thing.
Yeah, I think that kind of goes to what Anika is talking about as far as evidence, right? The fact that when you're doing genealogical research, that you're looking for actual real evidence to prove what it is that you know. So you don't just take some information anecdotally, like you're looking for multiple sources in order to trust that information, that is actually true. So that may be a source where you have this information that someone said, and then you can start to do some additional research. And if not you, then maybe someone on your team, right? You have some other people who are helping to do the interviews and such. Maybe you add one other person that is just a research fact finder. Like they just go into the sources online and they do some of that background research and see what they can find through the different sources. That may be something that you want to consider. So maybe bring what you've learned today back to your group, the other two who are helping with this project there, and then see if anyone is interested in adding on the layer of research.
Okay.
Yes.
So
all right. So we're kind of approaching time, and I wanted to make sure that I respect Anika's time. I do have a question about, how you moved from economics into this, and I know a little bit of the story, but maybe we'll do that in another part too, because I don't want to keep it too long today, but I want to see if are there any other questions that you all have for Sister Anika?
I have one question.
Okay.
Oh, thank you so much, Sister Anika. I mean, the information you have shared has been so valuable.
Yes.
Alhamdulillah. My daughter has been, doing some research, and she has identified the name of my great grandparents. And this was from the use of the family search. And it showed that they were born probably in the 1840s in that time period. And so they would have been on a plantation, they would have been during this period of slavery. And I would like to go beyond that. It seems as if that's as far as I can go, or she's been able to go. So I was just wondering if there was if you could give any other, any other strategies or, sources that I could use to go beyond that, because I would really like to go beyond to see who their parents were, and even the connection, the African connection. That's what I would really like to know about.
Okay. So yeah, the fact that she was able to get to the 1840s, alhamdulillah, sounds like she has very strong research skills. It's very difficult to uncover the formerly enslaved. And so one of the things that you can consider, well, first of all, there are some books that I put up on the screen that you may consider. But when we start talking about the formerly enslaved, the strategy is to look at the former slave owner. And in that, first of all, we don't even know if they were formerly enslaved. They could have been free people. We don't know. So the way that we determine if they were actually free is by looking into the 1860 census. There is an 1860 census, not the enslaved census, but the general census, and putting in your relative's name. If they show up, that means that they were free. Also look at the 1850 census, same thing. And so now if they do not show up, with which most of us do not, then you want to look at the surname. That's the first start. Many of the formerly enslaved have had more than one former enslaver. And so I always start with the surname. And I will then look at the 1860 the slave schedule. I start with that one.
The 1860 enslaved schedule.
If you go to Family Search or Ancestry, or even just put it in Google, 1860 slave schedule, then I would look in there and see in the area that my relative was in 1870, because you have to think about what was happening in 1870. They didn't have a car. They didn't have, they were walking. They would settle where they knew people, where there were opportunities. So they didn't go far. Many of them did not. And so in 1870, they are in, my family, they lived in Key West. I'm looking in areas where people from Key West traditionally migrate to. So it's probably Tampa or Miami or places like that, if they're not still in Key West. So in 1870, where were they? Then you want to look and see in 1860 what formerly slave owners are in that area with that surname. So once you find someone, this is when the work begins. Now, this is not, now the other stuff we were talking about, I was like, oh, it's, not that hard. This is not easy. And it takes a lot of time. You have to be passionate about finding a needle in a haystack. And so you start with that surname in that area. Sometimes there's a network of people, of families that owned our relatives, our ancestors. And so it could come up in that area. There might be 20, 50 people with that surname. Sometimes there's not. Sometimes there's one. Once you find that surname and people that were formerly former slaveholders, then you want to find their will. And inshallah, if they died before 1865, you got it, right? But if they died after 1865, then they didn't have any of the formerly enslaved. But if they died before 1865, they had to give the formerly enslaved to someone. Someone inherited those formerly enslaved individuals. And so this, you find the will, that's the whole other thing, right? You go to probates and wills and ancestry, family search, right? And you literally will have to read every word looking for the inventory list. You're going to be finding your relative in the mix of a bunch of nonsense. You know, he's, you know, he gave his shovel, he gave his this. And potentially, if you have an interest and others have an interest, I would hate to bore anyone. I'll show you how I've been able to find great detail on my relatives, my husband's relatives, and others. In fact, Sandy Falk, I did a lot of work on him. I found him as a child on an auction block in the newspaper. You know, so there's a lot of information out there. And you know, and they also will give a description, you know. If you have family in the Caribbean, they name the enslaved, the formerly enslaved. So you literally have a name and a slave owner if they were from the Caribbean. So I'm more than happy to help, but that's how you would do it. You start with the 1860 census, looking for the surname of someone who held slaves, the slave schedule.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Fascinating.
Yes.
So fascinating. Okay, so alhamdulillah, thank you so much, Anika. This is like, I mean, thank you from, I mean, to the 10th degree, if I can even say it that way, because like, you know, you hear about these things and you see the TV shows when they become popular, but I hadn't yet really let it sink into me doing the research for my family. And I thank you also for allowing us to see that, you know, some people may want to take what they've learned here and add some of this to their projects that they're doing. But for me also, I'm just thinking about it long term. You know, when something comes up or when I have one of those research questions that comes up, you know, jotting it down and then maybe going to Family Search and just seeing what you know, having an outlet for my curiosity, because I think these things come up consistently, and triggers make you remember something or get curious about something. And I too have a very small family, like that I know of anyway, but we could have a whole other trees out there that I
You
have,
do.
you know?
Do. And you know what, Sister Serena? I found that people just like me out there, people who love research, people who, you know, love investigative endeavors. And the very first person I ever called, he talked to me for however long I needed because he had been doing the work. And then when I got into a class, another brother, he was a doctor, and he had hired some ancestry genealogists, and he gave me his work. So that helped enormously. So you'll find people, there are all types of people out there, but you also want to be careful, because just because someone is a DNA cousin doesn't mean that, you know, that they're a good person. You know, so you also want to be careful with that.
That's a very good reminder. All right. Okay, so you all, I'm going to close us out. And Sister Anika, if you don't mind, if you can text me your address, your physical address, I want to send you a copy of, do you have At Their Feet? Do you have that book yet?
I don't.
Okay, so I want to send you a copy of one of the anthologies that we did, which includes 50 Black Muslim elders and their looks at life. So different aspects of their life. And then, you know, as we have another edition will be coming out this year, later on in 2025. So we'll be having 50 other folks in there. And then, of course, when these books, some people are doing books, some people are just doing stories or whatever, but those come out as well. But I definitely want to send you the At Their Feet, inshallah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Shukran.
Thank you. All right, everyone, can you unmute yourselves and please give Sister Anika a wonderful Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Alhamdulillah. Thank you so much for
Bismillah.
everything.
May
Alhamdulillah.
Allah bless your work.
May Allah bless all of your efforts
Yes.
and bless you for sharing and just Alhamdulillah. May Allah make it easy for you too.
I mean, sister.
Continue in your work.
Thank you.
Anika, you are a gem. Thank you.
Yes, she
Thank you.
is.
You're welcome.
Alhamdulillah.
All right. So you all, if anyone has any questions or anything that you all need from me for your actual books, I can stay unless you all, if you don't, then we're free for the evening. And you're welcome to come back next Wednesday when we'll continue into your next sections and so. So I'll just see, does anyone have any questions that they have? Anika, yep, you can.
Alaikum.
All right, walaikum salam. Thank you so much.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much. Alhamdulillah.
Wasn't that great?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, that was really great. I was really happy. She's amazing.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
You were telling me that I needed to go, I think it was, and determine the intention of the book. And I needed to try to locate that. So I got the Plan Your Legacy book part, but the particular thing you're talking about now, I do have, it seems to be a recording or something that you made it that has it, I think like 40 minutes. So will that work, or should I still be looking for something I can print out?
Inside of the plan section, there's like the handout, there's a workbook in there. And a part of that workbook talks about your intentions and such. So you can utilize that workbook, or to be honest, right now, just since you have it in your mind, just in your regular notebook where you're keeping notes for this, I just want you to write out, like, why are you writing this book? You know, why is this important? What do you hope to get out of it? Who do you want to read it? You know, so those basic questions. Why are you writing it? What's the purpose of putting this information down? Who do you want to read it? Like, what's the message, you know, that you're looking to put forward?
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. You're welcome. All right. Any other questions regarding your actual books that you all have? And feel free, those of you who don't have any questions, feel free to drop off. Like, you don't have to stay. I just want to make sure that I answer any questions that you all may have.
Okay, assalamu alaikum, everyone.
Walaikum assalam.
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam.
Assalam.
All right. Okay. All right. Well, I'll see you all next Wednesday. Have a good evening.
You too. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam.